Okay, in this episode we'll cover lead. So many governments around the world have been working hard, to remove lead from petrol, paint, and other materials, but exposure to lead is still a major public health concern. It's again similar to other heavy metals, it's very abundant in the Earth's crust. So traces of it will be found in everywhere, in the soil, the air. Certain water sources might be more contaminated than others. A lot of it depends on where you live in the world and what the past use of lead as a petrol and paint additive was. So if you're in an area, I know in the United States there are certain areas that are much more contaminated because there was a lot of cars and there was obviously a lot of petrol used that had lead in it. So they will naturally have the ground around the soil will have more lead. Depends on where you are in the world. Now, lead poisoning in children can cause fairly serious problems with growth and mental development. The thing about it is younger children are especially susceptible to exposure because they crawl around, they put stuff in their mouth. So this predisposes them if there's lead in the soil or in the surroundings, they're more kind of predisposed to getting some of that into their body. And high lead levels have been associated with negative effects on development and cognitive ability, like I already said, learning and behavioral disabilities, ADHD, and behavioral disturbances. So lead interferes with the metabolism of certain neurotransmitters such as dopamine and gamma aminobutyric acid. And this can basically, anytime you hear something interfering with the neurotransmitters, which are chemicals in the brain and the central nervous system, if something interferes with the balance of those chemicals or their metabolism, this can have direct and indirect effects on behavior. It's difficult to predict because everybody is so unique biochemically, genetically. So, but anytime you hear something can disturb or interfere with neurotransmitters or their metabolism, you know that it can cause behavioral effects. So common sources of lead, like I already said, it's everywhere to an extent in the air. It can be in contaminated water depending on where you live. It can be present in certain soils, and you can still find it in some paints, varnishes, other kind of household building products. A lot of it's released from coal burning, from energy, and a lot of it is released from heavy industry. So you kind of need to look at it like, do you live near an industrial area? Do you live in an area that used to have, let's say you were in a US state that had lead added, or a country that used lead, which probably most countries, basically if you were in an area that had a lot of driving traffic and lead was added to the petrol until, I forget what year they stopped it, I think it was around somewhere in the 80s. So things to do about it is definitely, if you're not already, start filtering your child's water, and definitely reduce building products, kind of all these industrial, household, gardening products. A lot of them may be contaminated with lead. Many are contaminated with various heavy metals. So reducing your child's exposure to those, and I'll cover this in a future episode, is super important. So that's a little primer on lead. In the next episode, I'll cover cadmium, and that will be done with the heavy metals for now. So thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on the next episode.